Good afternoon. My name is Janet Justice, and I work in the Education and Events Department here at FTD. I want to welcome you to our webinar titled Visual Impact Merchandising to Drive Sales. Today, you will learn how to capture the keys to visual merchandising to attract, engage, and motivate customers to purchase, and ensure a memorable experience to take with them once they leave your store, ensuring they will want to return. FTD Education Team member Keith White will be leading this informative webinar. Keith is a partner and the design director of A&K Productions, a special events company for retail, corporate, and trade clients. He has defined and redefined floristry, not as an independent art form, but a service of luxury merchandise in a global marketplace. Known for his extraordinary flow of creations, Keith's most recent designs can be viewed in the book Winning Wedding Bouquet Combinations, which he produced with Florist Review magazine and the California Cut Flower Commission. In addition, Keith has been creating extravagant floral designs for the official parade vehicles of the Rose Parade since 2007. In conjunction with this webinar, FTD is holding the FTD Makeover Magic Contest. To enter the contest, remember you must watch this live webinar in whole and then submit a 75-word essay explaining why your shop interior deserves a makeover, as well as 1 or 2 photos of your shop's current interior space and storefront window display. All submissions must be sent to prdept@ftdi.com by midnight Pacific time tonight, July 24th, 2012. The contest winner receives a store makeover valued at $5,000. You can view the official contest rules at www.ftdi.com/makeover. Once Keith is finished with his presentation, we will open the webinar up for questions. If you have a question, simply type it in the question box on the upper right side of your screen. We will take the questions in the order they are received. Please feel free to submit your questions during the presentation also. We will hold them until the Q&A portion of the webinar. So without further ado, I would like to turn the call over to Keith to begin the webinar. Keith?
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the webinar on today's Visual Impact Merchandising to Drive Sales. Hopefully everyone that's tuned in, I should say good morning to the people out on the West Coast and good afternoon to the people out on the East Coast. And with this program today, I want you to be able to get a glimpse of other stores, how stores can be either redone or motivated to be in a redo type of mode, or maybe you'll see things that say and will help you say, I'm doing things right, or maybe we could do a little bit of improvement here and there. So what I want to first start off with is to ask a few questions of you, and one is, do shoppers walk right past your store without coming in? And that is one of the key things, is the exterior of your store, what they see first, and the visual impact that might have on them. And I pulled a few photos from people that had posted things online on their websites about their store. And if you look into the actual first slide with showing Country Time Florist, you'll see that the visual impact that store has with lawn or garden tractors outside, the van parked outside. I, as a customer, would be a little confused on what Country Time florists might have inside their shop. If you look at the middle slide, I think my decision has been made for me, and I would not be confused at all because I only have one choice of arrangement in the cooler. So it's always that visual of what that customer sees and what that portrays about your store. If you look down at the bottom photograph on the left-hand side, you'll see the fact that people display flowers in different manners throughout the country. And this particular shot, it had a great display of mixed flowers placed upon used newspapers and some wonderful hydrangea plants tucked back in the shelf, a card table set up. And is that really the image that we want to portray in our store? And looking at the top slide, you'll see this was posted as a photograph of that particular store. And going through some things, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, are they selling flowers? Or are they selling cars? So if you're going to post on your website or have that visual image of your store, make sure you get a nice, crisp, clean photograph of what can happen on the exterior of your store. One of the key items, of course, in merchandising and being able to sell merchandise is lighting. So if you look down at that slide at the bottom, you will see that there's light bulbs out in the ceiling. So I guess what this shop is trying to portray is they have a lot of funeral sprays on the wall, which that might be their market they're catering to. And of course, they've used the perfect lighting. They only have one light on back in the back, showing or showcasing those funeral sprays. And you have to remember how people come to your counter and what they want to pick up too when you're looking at things. And I saw in this particular photograph, there's some vintage items like the chicken soup bouquet on the counter next to a gourmet basket with a fall arrangement tucked on the little table. So it's all these little items that this really doesn't tell a story or doesn't quite make any sense as where the shop is headed or what they're doing, other than they're featuring with the one fluorescent bulb burning funeral pieces. So when someone is actually looking at the outside of your store, and this particular photograph shows Monrovia Floral with on the awning with gifts, flowers, and plants, and I look at how words are even placed on awnings. Flowers is right above the central area of the door, so you know in your mind already has a picture. This is a flower shop. Not only their name, but the central item they're focused on is flowers. And you can see the shop is very clean on the outside. They have some nice plants, and we'll get into that with regional items, regional areas, because a lot of people can't do this year-round depending on the area that they're in. So keep that in mind too with trying to keep the exterior of your store in a presentable manner. So when you look also with stores, it says exactly what that store is going to have inside or what their feature products are. And I have a little tip to say for signage and other signage on doors is never use a closed sign on your door. Always keep the hours, but never have that thing where you turn it around and it says close. It just gives a negative connotation about that building. It has nothing to do with how pretty things are or anything like that, but it does also give that customer, oh, this store is closed. And we want to be open literally 24 hours if we could. So one of the things too, as a question for you, is if you have a front door and a back door, when was the last time you walked in your front door of your shop and saw your store literally through like your customer's eyes, even driving up, parking, and coming in the store? If you haven't done this in a while, I would say try it this afternoon after the webinar. Just go outside and come back in your store to look at it to see what that customer is actually seeing when they walk in to your store. One of the things, too, you're probably going, oh my God, what is merchandising? Is it buying, selling? It just really means selling the products that you have purchased and how to get those across, and it's everything you do to sell those products. And it's just like the open and close sign on a door. It's every little detail that you do to be able to sell your product to the consumer. So one of the things you want to always remember is to have those customers literally like stop the customer to be able to look and buy it. And in order to do that, you need attractive merchandising techniques to be done, and also the selections and assortments of products to have within your store. One thing about merchandising and totally the big picture is it is truly calculated selling. and not haphazard. So you look at the visual image of this store, and if I was walking down the sidewalk, and being a florist, yes or no, but anybody would want to stop and smell the roses literally at this store. And again, regional or seasonal, it depends on where you're located on what you'd be able to put on the exterior of your store. But it always grabs that customer or entices them into your store when you're doing this. So always remember, it's not haphazard. It's very calculated where materials are placed. Even like this store, the lavender, the big large containers of lavender give that great fragrance, and it's by the door. So people are going to be able to really evoke that emotion of sending or buying flowers, but also with the fragrance of that particular flower. And as you can tell in the photograph also, a lot of things are put in groupings, which is most important when you have multiple items. Instead of scattered everywhere, these are put into compact forms with like the hydrangea or the blue hydrangeas next to them, the ivy plants all brought together. So if you want to start out with merchandising 101, a lot of times it's just grouping like materials together. Makes a stronger visual impact when you do that in your display work. And I have to get back to, it's the first impression is the most important one. And when you look at how you portray your store image, I have to ask again a question, and you ask yourself is, who are you? Meaning, who is your store? What is your store all about? Do you have a focus or direction? And what market are you selling to? So if you ask those two literally simple questions, who are you and what are you doing to sell product, that will be a key element, is to find either your regional or niche market where you want to head with your floral business. And these, again, easy questions, but one of the key things to remember too is if you're in the brick and mortar store and you have an e-commerce site or website, those must be equal. And they're both important, but equally important to have that image on your website of what that store is, unlike that first photograph I showed you that there's a car parked out front and all those other little details. Make sure that your physical shop matches your visual shop on the web when you're doing the whole web concept of selling or e-commerce selling. And with FTD, you can go ahead and work with that whole concept of getting your landing page or home page done right to be able to showcase your store as it is. And so, again, very important, that first impression of making the store perfect on the exterior. When you look at pros and cons, yeses and nos, do's and don'ts of merchandising, I wanted to give you a kind of an overview of different types of stores. So one of the things is, it's like in real estate, always location, location, location. And with floral shops, they come in all shapes and sizes. I've been all over literally the world, and I have seen every kind of shape, every kind of size of store. And when you look at those, you really, this is part of your questioning of who am I and where am I going with my business. A lot has to depend if you are a standalone store, which means you become a destination. The customer has to come to you. It is a true destination that they're going to see X florist. And so how do you entice that customer to come see you in that standalone situation? If you're in a strip mall, Most likely you have some regulations, and depending on the state or even the county that you're in, city-wise, there might be a lot of regulations of what the exterior looks like of the actual strip mall, as far as even signage or colors of signs, and that might not match your logo exactly, but how can you incorporate the visual impact? Well, it's going to be your window space. All strip malls have glass fronts for the most part, and this will be the most important way to say who you are as an individual store in a strip mall, is what you portray in that window. If you're in an enclosed mall, I always say, oh my God, you already have a captive customer. But if you're in an enclosed mall situation, is how do you differentiate yourself from the other stores? What makes you special, and what makes you have customers walk through the door? Again, it's going to be, number one, a color that's chosen, the actual imaging of that store that will be able to draw that customer into a floral shop that's in an enclosed mall situation. So I want to go over briefly just a few of the kind of pros and cons of first impact and visual impact that will help drive sales. If you look at the photograph in the top corner, the left-hand corner, you'll see the window has a lot of color in it as far as red and white. They've stayed very strong with their color palette, but it's like they couldn't decide exactly where they wanted to go or what their shop imaging is by placing so much in the window. It again becomes very confusing. And one thing you always remember is if someone standalone or walk by, you only have a few seconds to grab that customer into your store and entice them to stop. And again, come in, shop, and I always say smell the roses. But when you look at the lower picture under that one, the photograph, it actually has great windows, and you want to be able to say, oh my God, there's all this window space, and what is this shop selling? They have one tiny little wreath on the exterior of their store, a beautiful pedestal here, but the only thing you can see is a white tablecloth and a lamp with a lot of little stuff around. These windows could make such a difference with the right kind of merchandising done in it, again, to have a great impact and be able to draw customers in, other than the backside of most things that are showing in the window. And when you look at, I was saying about standalone stores, strip malls, enclosed mall stores, the center photographs show different depictions of floral shops. And of course the one at the top, beautiful shop, very limited on window space, but the way the construction has been done on the exterior really helps that visually inviting feeling that you want to go into the store. The one in the center has a great awning with the sign, a lot of detail work with the window boxes all done, plants outside, again, a great window space that they've utilized. And then the one in the lower side has the branded FTD gold and black awning with their name and exactly what they're selling on the other side of the awning. So these are just depictions of flower shops that have done things very well, very clean, very inviting as far as a store goes. And one thing I brought this slide in here because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine when I drive by stores or look at stores and people hang that white lattice up. It is a very distracting item. A lot of people use it, but it really doesn't showcase your merchandise properly. So if at all costs, white is a great, important impact color as far as grabbing your eye in a window or even on the store itself, but avoid the lattice syndrome in all the windows. It makes your eyes go crazy. And so when you're looking at trying to do the other aspects of merchandising, you'll want to see the purpose, really, of why it is called merchandising. And you want to be able to tell a story with the items that you've purchased. If it's telling a story with the whole look of the store, or just telling a story with individual areas within that store. And I always have to go back to how everyone that's attending shops, they're shoppers too, just like the customers that come in our store. One thing I know everybody does is go to the grocery store. And when you enter a grocery store, and this is for that first impression syndrome, is you walk into that store and you usually walk into the produce department, which is fresh produce. And so in your mind already, it says that everything in the store is good, it's fresh, it's from the farm, when about 80% of what's in that store is packaged goods. So it's that first impression and the feeling that our body gets when we walk into that produce section. And it's like people walking into a flower shop. So many flower shops have their flowers hidden away in the back, and that is one of the things we're trying to sell. So be able to bring flowers out into the store. And one of the things that's about bringing flowers out, again, it's a regional and seasonal areas of hot and cold, but if you're processing your flowers, at least put them in nice black buckets or clear glass cylinders with fresh water, and put those out in your store to hydrate, even though you might not be able to leave them out in your store at all times. But at least during the hydration process, you can have flowers like lilies and let them open up for the customer in the store. And again, that will give you that impact that when they walk in, yes, you have fresh flowers in your store. So one of the things also I like to use kind of like the E word and 3 E's. You want to make it very effective, and you want to make it exciting to come into the store, and you want to make it enjoyable, and the bottom line, easy to shop. You want to be able to have people have that ease of shopping when they're in your location. The next slide shows some pros and cons. And one of the pros, and you look at the photograph, it's a lovely island they've built of merchandise. It looks like to me a lot of spa products or bath products that are put together with floral materials. And you can see this person has chosen lavenders, purples, and so color blocking creates a great impact. And then product assortments create a lot of interest within an area. But the con or the don't to all of this is, yeah, it's pretty and it's a really popular color trend, but the whole display says do not touch. And I think one of the things the more I looked at this photograph, the more I studied all the items in it, I think the only thing they forgot to use was caution tape around the whole thing. Because if you look at this display, it is very, very hard to shop. And so they have items placed way too high out of reach and then way too low, things and great items on the floor. And so when you have things too high or too low, those become not for sale items. So in your shop, as far as fixturing goes, it's very complicated. This whole setup here in this photograph shows boxes or cylinders, pedestals underneath going, I don't even know what this thing's made of. How sturdy is it to hold all this merchandise? You have tilted pots, bunched fabric. It's like if you, again, it says do not touch. And if you want to be able to touch anything, I would be afraid the whole thing would come down if I pulled one item out of here. So again, there's professional things to be done as far as tiered tables. Pedestals are great, but then there's professional display items like tiered risers, maybe an acrylic that you could use or utilize. But again, remember, not too high and not too low. And one thing also is to have organized product assortments. Instead of the products being strewn throughout the display, have them a little bit more tighter. Like I mentioned, groupings, that you can pull items together and those groupings. And when a customer walks into your store or is shopping within your store, I have this photograph of a store I redid a few months ago, and we brought out a lot of the flowers. The peonies were right prime season. They were running a special on those. We filled the buckets full of peonies, and then I also did a couple of arrangements at different price points with all the cut flowers. Therefore, the people know what the product's going to look like. It's kind of putting all the elements together and being that silent salesperson that the customer can walk over here, see the flowers in the buckets or in the containers, and also have the choice of picking it by the stem or by the design. And the silent salesperson is so good to have in your store, because you should never second guess what a customer likes. And I have to repeat that again. You just should never second guess what a customer likes that's walking into your store. Unless they're an old-time customer and you know exactly what they like. But as far as new customers, and people do have a tendency to change their mind here and there. And that brings me up to the fact that when you look at the whole product assortment, that again is a selling tool, is the assortment of products that you have available for that customer that walks into your store. One thing also is to stay relevant. And changing out displays, a lot of people have asked me, how often should I do this, or when should I do this? And I think it should be about every 4 to 6 weeks. A 6-week turnaround is good for a store. It's not maybe as crazy as a 4-week turnaround, and 6 weeks should be about the max you should push for turnarounds in the store as far as moving merchandise and where things land within the store. And again, stay calendar relevant in it, because seasonal items always be right ahead of the curve of what's coming up in the season. Right now you should be already putting in some of the fall items within your store, or if they're not in yet, think about doing it next week. So fall should be going right in now that summer's over. One thing to remember too is when you're purchasing items or larger items, let's say like the mirrored vase that's shown in the photograph, or the other larger silver vase that's shown in the photograph, those might be items that trans-season or can be transitional and what is called cross-merchandising. I don't know on this shop if they bought those for a holiday season or where they intended on those containers to go. But when you're making major purchases with larger containers, think about how those can be transitioned if you don't sell, or if they become rental items in your store. How can you make a look, and how can you draw those people to that area just with one simple container? And what I call those larger pieces is eye candy, and that is what gets the customer drawn over to that particular area here that's become, instead of holiday, there's succulents and a lot of the bromeliads brought in, and you can see the color combinations are very tight as far as the grays, the greens, and the whites brought together. And you go, oh my God, that's so contemporary, but look how they've utilized gypsophilia or baby's breath in large bunch form in that one container. And that's what I was getting at when you put fresh flowers out in your store along with the plant materials you have. Again, that creates that impact that will drive your sales. Also, some things that will drive sales is how products are showcased within the store, what color they're backed with. And this photograph, I did like a golden background, yellow background with the wildflower collection, but you can see already there's ribbons that coordinate with that look, and how those can be sold by the yard, by the foot, by the bolt, and so always have accessory items or products that tie into your story that you're telling. And a lot of people just have containers or other things that can go with this. All those kind of things become a whole storytelling area, and when the customer comes in, they will want to purchase not only one thing in that area, but they will think about it and they want that whole look and how can they achieve it. So they will be purchasing other items within that whole area, just showing these few little wreaths and the ribbon itself. So the bottom line with all of this is if you don't understand a lot about merchandising or where you can go with it, is to study and examine other retail stores. It doesn't have to necessarily be other flower shops, but go online and look at other flower shops. Look at their website and see what they're doing, or their color choices, their color palettes. And also look at where you shop as a consumer and shop owner or designer. Where do you shop? Why do you shop there? Ask yourself that question when you walk into that store the next time, and be aware of your surroundings, the visual part, but also color selections that other people have chosen that have attracted you into their store. So that's one of the things to remember too, is what attracts not only you, but can attract your customer. With all this said, I think this will help with increased sales margins along the way, and it also helps with purchase decisions. When you're buying products for your store, if it doesn't fit into a story, tell a story, don't buy it, because it will become what I call the orphan or the stepchild. It just doesn't have a place in the store, and it will look out of place if you don't have room for it or be able to tell that story with it. And of course, when you do things like this, it will cause repeat business within the store. Visual impact is a word I've said many times already today, and that's what it's about, is how you impact that customer. And shop size, small or large, sometimes it can be so simple as 3 bromeliad plants in a window with a fun background of brown and green on it. And this will, again, draw the customer in, and maybe this tells the story of your store, what you're about. You're a fun store, you carry a little bit different product, and this is what you're portraying. Again, it doesn't have to be fresh flowers always in the window. It can be a long-lasting plant like a bromeliad that can make a grand statement with just a few items. And so with this said, always think about simplicity in displays too. It doesn't have to be over complicated or over designed all the time. When you look at your store layout, that I mentioned all stores come in different shapes and sizes. It's about your sales and display area versus design area. And it's that syndrome of having all the flowers in the back or off to the side somewhere hidden away. It's just like your designers. Are they all hidden away in the back, or are they out in the customer's view to be able to design? I found it in one retail store, and it was something I did in a personal store of mine, is the design room was towards the back of the store. It was still visual, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to move my table up to the front windows and I'm going to design up in the front. You would not believe the impact it had on people coming in just to see what I was doing. Of course, it led to sales once they were in the store. But this is something to consider also, is it's like the flowers. Don't hide the talent in the back all the time. Have someone out front designing some things. People like to see. It's like open air kitchens and restaurants that you can actually see what they're doing, and that becomes such a draw in a store. Oh, did you see so-and-so? And it's like the pizza guy long time ago in the shop window twirling the pizza dough. I used to stand out there and watch this guy throw the pizza dough. So it's how what we do, we might not be selling even ourselves, and think of that as merchandising, but it's one of those other little things. It's how to get the people in the store or an interest within that store. And I want to review a little bit about stockroom versus sales space. So when you look at the photograph below, you can see in this store I incorporated a lot of merchandise, and dollar-wise, not only number-wise, but dollar-wise, in a very, very shallow space. And just the way it's merchandise, it's that impact like the lavender that I showed you in the other photograph, but here everything is within reach. The duplications are put on the lower shelf for stocking. So if it's in the stock room or storage room, it's hidden away. You might forget about it, or it is not, again, for sale because it's in the stock room. If it's out on your sales floor and it can tell the story or have a home, it should be out on the floor itself. And when you look at how one item can say it all, be proud of who you are. I put this photo in there because Paula Pryke, I've known her for many years, but with Paula Pryke flowers, and she has one arrangement showing here. Instead of all the clutter like in that one photograph, this shows that you are very, very confident in your business by showing who you are, your flowers, and by showing this one simple arrangement that here I am, and it's not a confusing statement. So again, sometimes avoid a lot of clutter that might just impact your sales as far as like, oh my God, don't go in there. You can't even walk around the aisles. You can't get it to anything. It's all junky. Everything's a mess in that store. So sometimes simplify things and then add in home good accessories or a little bit of items to it. But you can see in the photograph also a dominant color presence of a stripe. Think about that when you're choosing colors for your store, to maybe keep on the neutral palette or more simplified, and then pick dominant colors in product choices against a neutral background. When you look at basic techniques in merchandising, you'll want to see the products, but there's been a shift in buying. So you have home goods being brought into the floral store. So you always want to keep those clean and simple, like I said, well stocked, and have a great visual appeal to what you're portraying. In this scenario, I set up a Tuscan garden area. So that's why you see all the flowers very tightly combined with the great Tuscan containers. Again, it tells a true story. You can visualize exactly where that's going to land in someone's home. When you also look at the fact that, God, there's all these color choices. How do I choose colors? You can go for the trend, or you can choose some of the tighter color schemes. Look at your paint stores at brochures even they have out with color palettes that have been brought together. But always remember when you're choosing palettes that they fit in with your logo or the feel that you want to incorporate in your store, but also have that emotion of food brought into, just like the flowers. Think about food colors as one of your either accent colors or overall palette colors. And always remember home deck items, even if it's jewelry that falls into place or pieces that you see, that you can create a storyboard of this is what I'm going to do and I'm sticking to it. These are the colors, anything that fits into this. This is where I'm purchasing. So don't be afraid of trend colors, because fashion colors change quite rapidly in the marketplace by season by season. But when you talk about floral interior, the pace is much slower when you're choosing interior homescape colors, which work right into our floral shops. And so with this, you have to say, okay, maybe who are you, where are you headed, and with your shop. And I wanted to show you some examples of several little scenarios of setups. When you look at this particular set of photographs, you can see it's the contemporary edge, and also with the color choices, I mentioned neutral palettes. So the neutral palettes were not only used on the ceiling, the walls, and fixturing. Everything was kept in a very monotone coloration. And this works really well in a lot of store scenarios because then all your flowers pop just like all the flowers on the table. And you can see in this store everything is easy to reach, it's very shoppable, and you can also see that they have fresh flowers out in the store itself along with plant materials like the orchids being brought together. And again, it tells a story. With lighting, they've added additional drop-down lighting like the pendant lighting here or the other pendant lighting in the lower photograph. And one thing, too, to remember is sometimes you have to go back and go, oh, old school. The Sansevieria plant or mother-in-law's tongue. This particular design for this store had been done so simple. And again, it's an attention grabber. It grabs your attention to cause that little bit of ease of a contemporary edge. But again, with an old school plan, I call it. Also with the colorations, again, neutral palettes will seem to have a gravitation towards customers. So when you look at the next slide, the Rustic Garden theme, all the theme was literally based off of the bird's nest. So when you look at the bird's nest itself, you're looking at brown, green, and the brown and white moss that's around it with the egg form. And then all those colors, you can just take one simple item and either create a whole visual image for your store or certain areas within your store. But the pottery depicts exactly what the egg is in it, and also the accent color. When you look at accent colors, blue is a very strong color against the subtle green that was done even on the cabinets itself. And when you look at fixturing in your store, I mentioned pedestals are great. Here's a great alternative to bunching fabric. Have something that is for sale within your store, like a table topper that covers the pedestal. And then there's no caution tape needed around here. It just means buy me. And then also, if you have tables within your store, make sure they're form fitted with the proper linens that go on the store. And again, those can be for sale. One little area in this store was you were able to accomplish a lot. Not only the fragrance from the stock up here, you have that emotion happening, and also sales with ribbons. And then it's also important to be able to show how ribbons can be used, or if you have those accent pieces. And in this next slide, looking at ribbons to be used, they're also used on the counter. I mentioned the tablecloths, not only here, but tablecloths, they're available for sale right along the wall here. And this whole theme with Hampton Home, blue and white, of course, is the most pleasing color to over 50% of Americans. So if you want to go safe and pretty, and it's always a great look, is to start out with blue and white. White, I mentioned, is a very strong impact color, but yellow also is that complementary color that is very impactful too. So remember color choices and how the mode or mood that you're going to create when someone walks into your store looking at those items. Remember scale and proportion and the way products are used is, again, very important within a store. Some stores could handle this big arrangement up here, which is a large product, and not every store could be able to do that, but have things that are within those price ranges and price points when you're also displaying and merchandising product. And remember, display everything in your store is for sale. So when you start using things, even down to fixturing, if something is more portable, it's for sale. If it's a built-in, it's not for sale. It's just like product. If something's too high, not for sale, but if it's in with someone's reach, easy to shop, it's for sale. So without anything else, I'm sure there's lots of questions coming up, and one thing I would like to do is be able to answer as many questions as possible and look at it, and before you go on with your day-to-day thing, listen to some of the questions that are going to be asked and see if we can answer those in group form. But one of the things, remember this slide, pick a theme. If that theme is for your store itself, how you're going to portray your store, even if it's Country Time Florist, or you have different areas within your store that portray these different themes. Make sure you do color block areas. The impact is much greater, color blocking, and do some coordinating paint to go with those different themed areas. Put like product assortments together. Groupings become very strong impacts, and sell, and levels of product. Remember, not too high, not too low, just the right heights to be able to ease that shopper with choosing products. And then if you can't see it, you can't sell it, not if it's in the back room or you don't have proper lighting within the store. So always, always have that proper lighting done in your store to be able to show off exactly what you're doing and what you have. So I would like to thank each one of you for joining in today. And again, we're going to be answering some questions, but my handout materials can be found here at this website, the ftdi.com, FTD University, webinar materials. .htm, and then the webinar will be available to view at the ftduniversity.com. And if you don't get your question answered today, or you feel like you don't want to ask it in front of everybody, like some stage presentations, email me at jkeithonline@att.net, and I'll be glad to answer those questions as soon as I get to those for you.
Great,
Janet?
Keith. Yep, thank you so much for sharing a lot of great information with us today. Loved all the pictures, they were fantastic. Of course, we're now open for questions, so if anybody has a question, simply type it in the question box on the upper right side of your screen, and we'll take the questions in the order they're received. And we do have some questions already in. Janice has a couple of questions, Keith. The first question is, what is more important, a sign or an awning?
Depending, I would have to visually see your space to make that determination. A lot of times with awnings, they do and say a lot right on the awning. I've been in situations where an awning doesn't require the permitting or licensing that a sign might require. So that could be something you could check into, because a lot of cities and areas, actually you have to be permitted yearly and pay a sign permit. So you might check into that to see if you can save some money and say it on an awning over a sign, what your shop's about.
Amy? Okay, and Janice's other question is, what color is most effective for getting customer attention?
What is the most effective color for getting customers' attention? Well, I would have to say the gold and black of the FTD logo is pretty powerful, just with that symbol. But then you need to look at companies that have been around for many, many years too, just like FTD, is Coca-Cola. Red is an attention grabber. But when you look at how colors draw people in, don't forget about what I mentioned, the white color being so impactful. So like that one little shop that had that confusing window going on, you can tell the red and white stood out of everything else you saw in all those photographs. So again, red and white is very impactful as far as color. Now people might think you're wacky and that looks like Valentine's or holiday all the time of the year, but there are other ways to be able to portray those color choices.
All right. Keith, we had a request if you could go back one slide to the recap one with your theme and all that. Yes, that's great.
That slide, yes.
Yeah. People want to take notes on that. Amy has a question. She said it's getting hotter here in August, And some are definitely not over. Do you still recommend adding fall merchandise in the store so soon?
Yes, definitely yes. That's one of the things with a lot of retail stores. They're afraid to put the merchandise out too early within the season, but that's when people buy it, because it becomes, then they have the product for a longer time instead of such a small window, let's say like Thanksgiving. Of course, fall has turned into a huge market as far as selling goes, and yes, this is the time to be able to put it out. Yes, I understand it's very hot. I'm here in Texas, and I do get it, but this is the time to be able to put it out to, again, entice your customers, to show them that you are up to date and that you are current, that you're having your fall items out for their selection immediately.
All right. Addie wants to know, what's the best way to differentiate you for events versus your sales area?
In several stores that I've been in, and you have to remember what I said, there should be a price on everything. Everything should be priced. Do you want me to repeat it again? So if it is a rental item, even if it's a large glass vase, let's say looking at this particular slide, you can see that allium in there in that large vase. That could be a rental piece that you have, but it should also have a price tag on it. Of course, with rental items, it's always good to refreshen your rental inventory because of being in the event business. You do so many things, or so many parties, and everybody's tired of seeing that. They want something new. So it's a great way to be able to move, again, merchandise without reducing it, and maybe you've rented it a couple of times. But again, everything should have that price tag on it.
All right, our next question is from Dina. All of our walls are covered with slat wall. It would look strange if we painted just sections in colors. What would you suggest? Right now they're all white.
Your shop is very similar to the one that's on this slide then. Their walls are slat wall. Of course, with slat wall now, today, it comes in colors. I would not suggest painting it due to several showrooms that I've seen painted slat wall. It becomes a nightmare to paint all those little grooves. You will become very old before you get all the grooves painted in the slat wall. So looking at that, there's different ways around that by either choices of fabric panels that can be used. Those can be either done with a lighter weight board, like a paneling type board where fabric is actually where you do upholstered walls and put it up against it, or you can even do it budgeting wise with even foam core sheets that are covered with a fabric. And that's a real current kind of way to be able to portray maybe a pattern, or even if it is a solid color. I don't want to keep going back into slides, but even like that blue and white, my God, if you were going to show some kind of fabric panel on a slat wall, that will change your whole look of your store with that slat wall by adding fabric panels into certain areas to get that merchandising done.
All right, we've got a question from Dolores. She said, when displaying your items, should price tags be placed on the front of the item so the customer does not have to pick up the item, or should they be on the bottom or the back of the item?
I mentioned ease in shopping. Make it as easy as possible. So if in an American world, in an American eye, people gravitate towards the right-hand side of anything. It's always heavy on the right for some reason. And if the price tag is always on the right-hand side of something that you're pricing, then it's very consistent throughout the store. And it's easy to spot, easy to see, and never put pricing underneath containers. That will drive everybody crazy, and again, it becomes like do I pick it up? If I pick it up, they might think I'm interested. If I put it down, they might think I'm too cheap to buy it. So you want to, again, make it easy for not only the customer but the salespeople or salesperson within that store to be able to be knowledgeable. Well, how much is this? Well, the price tag's, very visible on it. Does that answer?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Robin wants to know what color sign has the most impact for outside of your store.
A sign that has the most impact outside of the store.
Yeah,
I
what
would
color?
want to, what color? I would want to say, well, there's all different types of signs. So if you go into even neons, those have, of course, several different colors and can be put on different color backgrounds even. But something that it all depends, I think, too, on your logo and what your store image is. If you've picked, I call it forest green as your standardized color, then make sure that your logo is going to pop out. Whatever color is going to be the most visible that ties in your store theme, and I hope you understand that theme, because some stores want to be only contemporary and some stores only want to be on the countryside or rustic side. So your signage should also relate to that theme of your store and colorations within there. You shouldn't stick, because I mentioned, FTD, the black and gold. Sure, the branded logo awnings really do say something and are very powerful, that color. But then and I mentioned the red and white, if your store has nothing to do with red and white as far as what the image you're going to portray, I would not choose, the powerful color of red for your signage.
All right. Samantha and Denise had a couple of similar questions about color. They're asking, for the interior paint, is it better to use bold, more trendy color palette or stay safe with the neutrals? And Denise was kind of asking the same kind of thing. Would you use different color block sections in the same shop? Or would you do different areas in different colors?
It's even like the photograph that's up right now. As a general rule overall, you should choose a color for the whole store that goes with your store or what customer you're trying to portray. And of course, the neutral theme, neutral color palettes are usually the best to start with. Like this one is on a kind of beige gold side. So the neutral palettes, you can see, show the flowers off a lot better. But you can also see in this photograph that they've used gray, and I hate to say with the book out, 50 Shades of Gray, but lately some things that I've done with gray have been so, they just look so current with the color, with the different shades of gray in a store. The flowers all pop. It's very clean. It's very sharp looking. And again, it's very up to date. So instead of the usual taupe browns, paper bag browns that a lot of people went through in the late 90s, early 2000s, it's the colors, I think, for walls are, I'm seeing more and more that the shades of gray going into places, because again, it's off of that blue palette, and it becomes a very soothing palette in the store. And again, products pop right off of that color. And you mentioned, yes, then you can incorporate other colors within your store. And again, depending on the size and the location of areas you want to highlight visually with maybe room settings if you have, or to tell a story even in one shelf unit, you can always back the shelf unit not only with paint, but you can also back it with a fabric back, like I mentioned, to go against the slat wall, again, to tell a story, and it becomes very current, very up to date.
Great, great. All right, well, I know we've reached our hour time limit, but we do have a lot of questions still. So, you know, we'd love to have everybody stay on if you can. If you can't, we'd understand that, but we're going to keep going, Keith, because we've got a lot of questions people want to ask you.
Cool. Before everybody drops off, and I want to answer as many questions, you know, as I can. But again, if you haven't registered for the makeover, I must say, register. You have till midnight tonight.
Yes, that's a good reminder. Thank you. Yes, the FTD
Okay.
Government Contest.
Next question.
Submit the essay and your photos to prdept@ftdi.com. The next question is from Tess. She said, is keeping the parking lot updated with paint and the yellow lines and the blacktop paint and the pavement and all that kind of stuff, is that an attention grabber?
I think that's a mandatory rule, just like handicap parking signs.
All right. And
is that what you're saying? The blacktop and yellow striping to have the parking spaces?
I think maybe her question is.
Then you must have
the
FTD logo.
Today, you're not run down, I think. So I would say the answer is probably yes. Lance also wants to know. Lance and Tess have two questions that kind of go together. He's wondering if you just do a vignette of fall now, which I think you answered that previously, and Tess wants to know when you suggest putting out Christmas.
So if you do fall now, when should Christmas go out? Christmas would be it needs to be in an area, so it might be secondary. You can start again. Whatever is the most seasonal and current, that needs to go and the most high traffic part of your store. So usually that is the entryway, but again, shops are also different. But feature your fall and the front. Then you can start in the back or an area part of your store that's going to incorporate part of your Christmas themes, and you can start doing installation of those early. I try to look at those anywhere by the end of October. A lot of people go, can't we just get through Halloween first before we put up holiday? But again, the sooner that you can start eking some things into your store, the better off or the longer selling period you have for that. So if you have trees or hard goods, soft goods, other than floral materials going in, and that would incorporate in the hard and soft goods would be silks or garlands that are permanent botanicals, things like that. You can incorporate those starting in your store, I would think, by the end of October at the latest.
All right. Marcy has two windows on either side of her entry door. The windows are approximately 6 feet by 5 feet. How do you feel about having them match in decor?
How do I feel about what?
Having them match in decor.
To do like mirrored images. What is the front of the shop other than the door and these two windows? They're 6 foot wide?
Yes, 6 foot by 5 foot.
5 foot high?
Mm-hmm.
They do not necessarily have to match and decor, but again, if you're looking at an impact, it's better to have them coordinate with each other. So instead of doing totally opposites, unless, it's going to be one of those calls I would love. I mean, if she wants to shoot me a photo of her front store, maybe I can identify it a little bit better. But again, like for holiday, it could be great to have one look in one window and another look in one window for holiday.
Okay.
But do shoot me a photo of your storefront, and I'll be glad to get back with you on it.
Sure. Kathleen has a very country feel in her store, and she's brought in large antique pieces from home for display. She's wondering if she should remove them since they're not for sale, but she's just using them for display only.
They're not for sale. Doesn't everything have a price? So that's what I was getting at. If you love them that much, get them out of your store. If you want to sell them, And one of those things, you might be really surprised. Sometimes people go, oh, I really don't want to sell this, but then, you know, 2 years or even 2 months down the way, they change their mind. I say put a high price tag on it, and if it sells, great for you. And you can always replace it with something. But if it's some treasured antique that's from your family or something you really, really don't want to sell, I would definitely take it out of the store.
Okay. Amy's question, how can you display older containers that you only have 1 or 2 left of? And she doesn't want them, of course, to look like it's the bottom of the barrel and that.
You're talking about the stepchildren and the orphans. If they don't tell a story and fit into the store situation at some point, it's always great to have an area that if it's an older item that you just want to move out, think about filling even an order with it if possible, or have it in the design room that, oh, you have to use one of these every day or once a week, or again, have an area in your store that's a reduced item. It's better to reduce something, get it out of the store, than it is to keep it in the inventory itself and be able to purchase something new instead of having the old things laying around.
Okay. Tess has a question about music. She said, is music something that should be played while in a flower shop? A soft background music, maybe?
I have been in many, many shops that do play music, and I think it's another one of those elements that it really sets a mood in the store depending on what's on. So I'm all for music in stores. Again, it depends where the phone is and phone banks and things like that within the store, where the speaker systems are, but it always gives a really finished out ambiance in the store to have music going.
Great.
Without commercials, because they're advertising other businesses while they're in your shop. So yes, just music, no commercial-free music.
Great. Cheryl, this is another color question. Obviously, it's very important. Should the whole store be color coordinated, or can they section off with different colors?
Can you repeat that again?
Should the whole store be color coordinated, or can they section it off with different colors?
If she wants to, I hope she wins the makeover then. We can determine that instantly. But when you're looking at, again, a cohesive look in the store, it's better to have one color that flows throughout the store and then do areas. But it sounds like she wants to section off and make rooms within this space. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so.
Make sure when you're doing room settings, or you're literally putting up walls in a store, that there sometimes, you know, for safety's sake, they have to be attached or built in. You know, stud, sheetrock, if you're going to go that direction. But also remember, you can do freestanding types of walls in 4 by 8 foot sections that can be put together, and then that gives you a reason to be able to be flexible later on when you do want to change things around, again, over something being built in. And sometimes it only takes a couple of 4 by 8 sections to be able to create a room in and create that ambiance that you want within a certain section of the store. So again, just remember flexible over total built-in everywhere.
All right, Lori has a question about lighting. She said, as far as proper lighting, they have fluorescent ceiling lights. Should they consider changing their lighting or possibly enhancing it in a different way?
One with fluorescent lighting, of course, there's several different types on the marketplace, and fluorescent lighting, if you have the wrong bulbs in, they change the color of products drastically. So you want to make sure you have the proper, either the white lighting bulbs in those fixturings, and just check it to make sure, see what lighting that you're doing with fluorescent. I've seen some stores be able to get away with only fluorescents, and then because of the lower ceiling height, because again, depending on your ceiling height, if you start dropping track lighting fixtures or any kind of fixturing down from the ceiling, you might be too low already. So you want to keep that in mind when you're adding fixturing. One way to be able to do it even with all fluorescent is to do some of those drop-down, either type of pendant lighting or something like that, that just gives you another ambiance or accent. Or if you're in the home decor market at all, you might consider purchasing for sale a few lamps to go in the store. One store that I redo quite often and seasonally, that's the scenario there. They have lower ceilings and all fluorescent. There's no way to do track lighting. But in order for her to get that at-home ambiance going, she buys lamps and sells them in the store. It's amazing what she sells, lighting fixture-wise. That, again, it's for sale. So if you're going to think about investing, again, have it as an item that is for sale.
Great. Dina says they have a very large building, and on one side it's completely blank with just the siding. She said almost a commercial building look. Would you suggest that they put something on it to show that they're a flower shop, or would that look cheap?
You know what could be very interesting too is and depending on the town, her region, I don't know where that is, but there's some great projects that you can get involved with, even if it's a school project or something to entice people to come to you as a business. It's kind of a PR ploy to be able to even have kids come out or do something, and if it's an older building or something and they're trying to rejuvenate the area, is to even paint murals or have kids do some things on the side, and it becomes a project. I know you can always paint over it at some point, but that might be something to consider. Now, if she's considering doing, a large floral, a lot of flowers or something, I would really, you want to look at the graphics, and again, whatever your shop is portrayed as, if it's, again, I just used contemporary or rustic country feeling, or just an everyday shop. It depends on, again, what you're going to paint on that side. If it's just like a bunch of flowers and it does tie your shop together, great. Or if it says your shop name on it, make sure it's, again, consistent with how you're conducting business, who you're gearing your customer base to.
Great. Dixie says they have a support post as you enter the store that obstructs the view. What color would you suggest it be painted?
There's a post that I didn't quite hear all of it. Sorry.
It's a support post as you enter the store that obstructs your view.
That obstructs your view.
Right.
One thing that, without seeing it, shoot me a photograph of it, and I'll send you a couple of answers back. Possibly you could try. One thing is mirrors always have, again, a great value. It's that old, I call it the old syndrome. Well, I only had to make one and it looks like two if you put it in front of a mirror. So depending on how that is situated in the store, if it's at if it's at an angle or you're dead on, look dead into it, there might be some other treatments that you could use on that post to make it, instead of blocking a view, make it a point that you can, that it becomes something in the store itself without saying it's a support column.
Okay. Donna says, her question is, when you have an old building, how do you look modern and hip? They now have olive-colored walls, which seems to look good with any flower colors. Is that a good color to stick with?
When she says an old store, is it in a building that's like brick building, or is it strip mall, or can you ask her? Or
she does not say that. She also has a second question, which I can draw up to. What is recommended for flooring, because their old building has uneven floors, so it's hard to know what will work there.
Uneven floors like in wood plank flooring, or laminate floorings and carpet and wood and tile combination flooring?
She said their building is in downtown.
Downtown where?
I don't know. This might be a better one where Donna tells you some details.
Tell her to please shoot me some photographs, and if she hasn't entered the contest, she can use those photographs at the same time. But shoot me a couple of photographs and show me what exactly she's talking about, so I can give her a couple of tips on that.
She has wood floors with carpeting, so yeah.
Wood floors with carpeting?
Yes.
It depends on the wood floors. It's very, very chic to have the wood floorings exposed, even if they're in rough shape. I mean, the look is there. I know sanding can be an issue within a store, but a lot of times different products can be applied to those floors to make them work. And to me, that's part of the ambiance of being in an old building downtown and with wood floors, is to have them in a rustic form. They don't have to be like your grandmother's polished wood floors any longer.
Okay. Cheryl is in a smaller town, and she really can't change her merchandise every 3 to 4 weeks. Would changing the display and moving some of the product around be enough, do you think?
Yes. Yes. It's always good to move the store around. And you mentioned about 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Even if she gave it like once a month, have a regiment of saying, okay, it's the first of the month or it's the last weekend this month, and we need to move things around. Because again, what happens is when your customers, your walk-in customers, keep coming in, it's really strange, but every store has a hot spot and it has a cold spot in it. And the cold spot is, I don't care what perfect thing you put there, and that cold or dead spot in your store, it's never going to sell. And it's just one of those weird things that happens in stores or in certain areas. And so, again, if you kind of shift merchandise around, even if it's the same merchandise, regroup it or put it in different color palettes together, see what goes together to tell that story. But yes, still move it around. And the next time the customer walks in, they might never think of looking over there, because a lot of people gravitate to color, number one, but going into other areas of the store. So they might be able to sell some items that, just because they haven't been moved around, a customer has never seen it before. So yes, do still try to move things around, even if you're not purchasing some new items to fill in.
Great. Bonnie said that they tend to display their many green plants in clear saucers. Do you have a better solution?
Yes. On plants, one of the things, it depends again on their store, how they sell plants. If they sell plants as like carryouts, like that one photograph showed, everything was still in a pot ready to go. I've been in many a store and have seen many a store that's what they do. They just put their plants out on the sales floor with a clear saucer under it. Again, do they really send it out that way, or how do they normally send out plants or sell plants? If you're doing that in your plant store, meaning you do sell a lot of plant material within your store, do you have pots to sell with those? It's like the ribbon I showed next to the wildflower wreaths and garland. It's an add-on sale. Instantly, if you have coordinating or accenting merchandise to go with those plants, that's great. But there's other ways to display plants without clear saucers, as far as even longer window boxes that can be purchased quite inexpensively, really. Some are even out of recycled materials or plastic material that are longer window boxes that you can line your plants up in those window boxes and get rid of all the plastic saucers that are on the floor. And remember to elevate sometimes the smaller plants to an area. Again, easy reach. And again, without knowing how many plants you do sell or what type of store you're selling so many plants in, it's most likely a garden slash center florist, that you have those additional items available to purchase as far as what to put the plant into.
Okay. Dolores' question: if you have items that you have reduced, marked down, should they be scattered throughout the store or in a clearance area? And should you ever have a clearance area?
There's, again, pros and cons to that. One of the things, too, is if it's seasonable merchandise that you want, of course, it almost means, and I'm just going to use, let's say, Christmas as an example, or we could use fall, some specific holiday that you have merchandise that you want to clear out. It's better to put the entire thing on sale, or area or feeling or holiday on sale at whatever you want to do, whatever the market's going to be there for you. If it's 20% off, 30, 40, 50% off, or if you really want to get to it, 75% off and get it out the door. It's been there way, way too long. But if you only have size and space in your store and you want to move some items like that, again, it's better to have a end cap or an end area that only has clearance merchandise in it. And I've seen that work very well in stores. And you go, God, I hate to wait for that customer to come in after the fact of a holiday to buy it on. But I've seen customers do that where, they come in a couple of days before the holiday and is it on sale yet? Is it on sale yet? Well, it's kind of cool because they're going to come back and get it, and it's going to be gone. But they just want a good price. And so many times if they see the word sale, again, that's part of merchandising. Even if it is at a 10 to 20% off, even 25% off situation, and you have that sale sign, a proper sale sign on merchandise, or today, this week only, 25% off all containers, in the area, that should work out. So again, depending on size and location within your store, but I hope that helps with a few tips.
Yes, Sue her shop is in a 104-year-old house. She said they're having issues with what to do on their large front porch for displaying outside. They have 3 feet wide, 6 feet tall display areas that aren't easy to do. Do you have any suggestions?
Can I move in? I love older houses, older buildings, things like that too. And when you look at how to be able to do something like that, if it's truly still looks like a home or a house, is to treat it as such and make the home inviting. So if it's to do plantings outside, again, I don't know what region you're talking about, but to keep the landscape part done properly, and then also maybe to do potted items outside could help tremendously. Seasonally, they can do, I've seen one store that is a home that I've worked with for many years too, and they just do window boxes across areas of the railings or front with, again, seasonal blooming plants, and region-wise, you know, so hot or so cold, they've even tucked in the silk bushes or permanent botanicals. And not that it's tacky or anything, it's just, again, it draws the eye, and it tells a story already that, oh yes, this shop is already together. They've got, you know, fall mums out, you know, in the planter boxes, because it's going to be fall. So again, staying current with what you do there, or even possibly if there's windows, maybe some simple type of wreath form, not over exaggerated, but maybe exaggerated in size, but not exaggerated in product mix, but maybe some type of simple wreath with some incredible ribbon, even if the ribbon is a metal, like a metal type of ribbon for the summer or seasonal, or again, depending on the weather conditions. So something that maybe it goes back to maybe being more simple to draw the eye, you know, to that house.
Kathleen also has an older shop. She said they have a sage green wall in an old building from the 1880s. The ceiling is the original tin and is painted white. She's thinking of changing it to a Dijon light creamy mustard color. Would this be a comfortable color palette to go with?
For the store itself?
Yes.
For an overall color, to change it to that, like what was shown, like that, like a Tuscan gold or Tuscan yellow.
It's the ceiling key. The ceiling, the original tin is painted white, and she's thinking of changing that ceiling color
to a different,
to
something
Dijon,
else.
Yeah, to a Dijon mustard, kind of a creamy, light creamy mustard color.
And your walls, and the walls were like a sage color green.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. She said not the ceiling, the sage. It's currently sage green wall, and they want to change the wall to a creamy Dijon mustard color.
Yes. Tell her to shoot me an email, and I will show her exactly. I just did a thing with that color, and all the fixturing, lacquer tin ceiling was done in pure white, like a ceiling white, and it was more on the Tuscany side. But tell her to shoot me an email, and I'll shoot her a couple of photographs back of what it'll look like. And one of the things I have to mention with the handout, there's some contacts also in there of like paint companies, and a couple of them have what is called a visualizer, and you can actually go in there and choose and pick colors and look at it to see what it's going to look like on a simulated wall or simulated areas, and it's a really cool tool to use. And there's several apps for the iPhone that will do that also, that you can go in and what is called a visualizer, and you can actually see those paint colors. But if she wants, shoot me an email and tell me she has the sage green walls with the tin roof painted white, and I'll shoot her some photographs back of that Tuscany yellow gold that I just did in the store, and it was beautiful. I mean, the product showed up incredibly well against it.
Great. Well, we've got just a few questions left, but Keith, why don't you switch the slide back to the one with your email, the next one with your email address, so everybody can grab that. If they do have any others, we'll sit there for a minute.
There's my email. Okay.
Yes. Keith online at att.net. Michelle says they have a lot of codified products and vases, but they have limited space. What's the best product that you can recommend for storage, and how to store the containers, or should you have them all on display?
With the FTD codified products in it, and it sounds like you do a lot of your shopping through FTD Marketplace. So there is ways of doing that without hesitation, believe me. That one slide that I showed with all the blue hydrangeas, I would do an area that would be very similar to that using codified product, even if it's and then you can do it by color, or if it's clear vases, be able to incorporate those either with your fresh flowers or permanent botanicals around, or be able to incorporate, again, plant materials that might be blooming. And it sounds like, and it can be an ideal situation to be able to color coordinate those containers, again, with maybe blooming plants that you do sell. And but don't store, on all my design programs that I do with FTD, you don't have to keep those codified products under lock and key stored away in the back room. They're not in prison, they're for sale, just like everything else in the store should be. So yes, be proud to have them and show them out on the sales floor area.
Okay. Lori said one of their side walls is actually covered like a pegboard. They have shelves on it currently with some different items. They were thinking about taking the shelves down and then using that space for wreaths. Are there any other ideas that the pegboard wall can be used for?
With pegboard, it can be painted. So don't be, unlike slat wall, it can be painted, and you'll see that it shows, of course, the holes. It might not be the easiest solution, but it can be done much easier than slat wall. And depending on the shelves, again, it might be better to do fixturing shelf units that are movable over wall shelves. It just seems a little bit more up-to-date and current, and it sounded like they just wanted to use it as a wreath wall. Be careful of mixing so many products, on one wall itself, because then it lessens the value of other items that are put on that wall if you have a big mixture of wreaths. So just keep in mind with that is don't mix it up too much. And again, the pegboard can be painted.
Okay. Samantha has a downtown shop that is also a very old building with concrete walls. So she said it makes it hard to hang things, and all of their display racks are completely different. She's wondering what's a good way to display things when nothing matches and you can't really hang anything. Is there any inexpensive way to make everything match?
One thing with masonry walls is it can be easy to hang with. You just have to go back. It's like the Sansevieria plan or mother-in-law's tongue. Look at old school. And a board can be mounted like a type of molding, even if the ceilings or the walls, the ceiling height is high, or the walls are like, oh, I know what you're saying. You just can't start nailing masonry nails all over the place. But you can also be able to do what was called a picture rail molding, and be able to attach that at one level within the store, or it can be done. So look for it. It's called picture rail molding, but that can be mounted on a board itself, then attached to your masonry, and then you would have to hang everything off of that that piece. So it could be very creative feeling by hanging wreaths. Old school wise, there was cording that hung down to hold everything, instead of nailing into plaster walls. So with mounting something permanently on that wall, on the masonry, then you would be able to hang things off. You could use ribbons to hang your wreaths off and things like that. Now, as far as mix match of fixturing, if the fixture, and they want, again, if they want a theme in their store, and I want to say, let's just say it's rustic feeling in their store, or it could be the contemporary edge. It's better to have more of the fixturing matching if it's an open concept store, but if there is fixturing that falls into place with certain looks, then it can tell a story, again, with those different fixturings.
Okay. Anna has a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's workable. It really is workable. Okay.
Okay. Anna has a question. She said, you know, you have a beautiful display showing all your flowers and everything looks beautiful. Of course, customers come in the store, picking flowers out of the vases, water gets all over that. She's like, you know, how do you handle that? Because, you know, you don't want to tell the customer not touch. I mean, that's why it's out there.
Could you repeat the very first part? I didn't.
Just her comment was, you know, you make these beautiful floral displays, and you know, flowers and that, and then everybody's looking at it, but then there's touching, and it kind of gets a little messy. How do you kind of keep that neat looking and that, because you don't want to tell customers that they can't touch.
So then she needs to be able to, if they're doing those, like what I call icon arrangements or large arrangements with mixtures of materials, is that what she's saying? Is it for sale or not for sale?
For sale.
It's for sale, but she doesn't want the customers to touch it?
No, she's just trying to ask how you handle it when people start to make a mess.
Because they're touching merchandise?
Yes, if water gets all over the place and things like that when they're picking things out of vases and.
Got it. It sounded like, okay, something else. I was thinking along another line. But when they're when you have vases of flowers on there, again, if it's a silent salesperson that's doing it and it's self-select, that's something that it's just going to happen. I mean, water's water. And so just be careful of the surfaces that you are putting it on and the surfaces they are walking on. If it's concrete, it can become, of course, very slick. If it's carpet, there could be some issues with the water. But if it's in a control situation where there is a salesperson in order to help that person, then they can be a little bit more careful with handling fresh flowers, or have it in an area where you know, the water's not going to become an issue with it. But I understand what she's talking about now, totally. It'd be like putting, like I mentioned, putting lilies out, and some customer comes in and starts just grabbing up lilies and breaks them all, and you know, now you have nothing for sale, and the customer just broke, you know, $100 worth of flowers. So I do understand it. So just you know, people. This past weekend, I do get it and understand it. There was a bouquet all made out of Phalaenopsis orchids and hydrangeas. Well, the Phalaenopsis orchids, and that's part of it. It becomes an experience in shopping at our expense. That people walked in and they were like pinching those Phalaenopsis, thinking they were not real because they looked so perfect. And I think that's what she's getting at. It's like, I wanted to put up a sign finally that said do not touch either, but that was the whole part of the experience, was them being able to feel, touch, and smell the flowers. But I do get where she's coming from. So yes.
All right, we've got two final questions.
Yes.
Lori says she's seen stores with their ceilings painted bright colors like hot pink, lime green, bright purples and blues. Is that a bad idea?
It depends on what's hanging from the ceiling also, lighting, fixturing, anything like that. And a lot of the color will change the height of ceilings. Of course, black makes everything disappear and your ceilings appear much higher. And blue a lot of times is used because it almost is an invisible color. It raises the ceiling also. One thing you have to remember when choosing colors or hotter colors for ceilings is, like a black or any of those brighter colors, is that it's fun, but it's amazing how much light is soaked up by those colors just being on the ceiling. So with painting ceilings, colors like that, you're going to have to really amp up the lighting. If you have a lot of natural lighting in the store, it might work out just fine. But if you don't, you're going to have to really amp up the lighting that's in your store if you go brighter or darker colors on the ceiling.
Okay. And our final question from Doris. She said her shop's in the middle of the block, sits back off the street. They don't allow her to put a hanging sign in the front near the street. So she's wondering what they can do to bring customers to know that they're there.
It sounds like she's a candidate for any type of awning that could be able to tell her story outside with that. If they have a sign ordinance or signs are prohibited in areas, and of course that's why I mentioned a lot of places even have height restrictions for signs that can go up. So maybe check into awning situation, or depending, again, if it's Doris, correct, have her shoot me a photograph of the front of their building and I'll take a look at it and see if it's even manageable to do something signage-wise right on the building that tells her story.
Great. Well, Keith, why don't we switch to the final slide? And I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. Of course, if you missed a portion of the webinar or would like to view it again, a replay will be available at FTD University Online in a few weeks. The webinar materials are available at ftdi.com. Click on the FTD University logo on the right side of the home page, and then click through to the webinar series page. The next FTD webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, August 14th. Tim Huckabee from Floral Strategies will share superior customer service skills, which are the key to bigger sales. Registration is already available at ftdi.com, so please be sure to register as soon as possible to reserve your spot. Don't forget about the FTD Makeover Magic Contest, as Keith mentioned before. To enter the contest, please make sure you submit your 75-word essay and 1 or 2 photos of your shop to prdept@ftdi.com by midnight Pacific time tonight. More details and the official contest rules can be found at www.ftdi.com/makeover. Also, please, if you haven't yet, check out FTD's new Facebook page that celebrates, educates, and informs you, our member florists. Go to www.facebook.com/Mercury Network and like us. Of course, we will be sending you a survey to gather your feedback on today's webinar, so please complete this brief survey to help us improve future webinars and other education programs for you. Again, thank you, Keith, for sharing such great information on merchandising. This concludes FTD's webinar, Visual Impact Merchandising to Drive Sales. Thank you.